Ooh, Criminal Minds! I absolutely love the show Criminal Minds. I don't know if any of you guys agree. But I've been planning on doing a little bit of a series on Criminal Minds. You know, like real cases that Criminal Minds mentions or has covered in entirety, or ways that the real BAU have influenced movies and television. So to start that off, I thought I'd give you a little history on profiling and the BAU. One of the very first cases of profiling had to do with Jack the Ripper, BTW. I love you guys to death, but I will not cover Jack the Ripper for you, just because there's no answers there. There's just a whole bunch of questions, and it irritates the heck out of me, so I will not be covering it for you. But I will tell you one way that had they known more about profiling at the time, they probably could have caught him. The police here had kind of reached the end of the rope. They didn't really know what to do, so they had a couple surgeons do autopsies of the bodies and kind of write up, you know, what were the injuries and what do they lead you to think about, you know, the way this person was killed. One surgeon, Dr. Thomas Bond, somehow had the knowledge to give them a lot more. The cops at the time didn't really understand what the heck he was doing and didn't really know how it was that he could figure that out, so they kind of just ignored it, but it probably would have led to his capture. However, psychiatrists did take note of this profile. They spent the next 50 years to try to look through different crimes and people who commit them, and looking at murder cases and trying to find commonalities in the people who commit them. The next time they tried to use behavioral science to figure out what someone was going to do, it was Hitler in the 1940s. In 1942, a couple psychiatrists attempted to study Hitler enough to figure out, you know, what would be his big movements. Mainly the United States was afraid of him as he was winning the war, but they thought he might be more dangerous if he was made desperate and began losing the war. So they tried to figure out what he would do. Based on some of his traits, which I've learned in the last 24 hours, and let me tell you, he was a weird dude. Hitler was so much more gross than I originally thought. Like, I knew he was crazy, but also, ew. And because they studied him, they were actually able to predict that he would kill himself if the war didn't go his way. And if you didn't know, that's exactly how he died. But the official turning point from thinking that that was just kind of, you know, random speculation to actual science happened in the 1950s, when there was a mad bomber in New York City who was bombing like movie theaters and Con Edison workplaces and train stations because he was mad that he'd been fired from Con Edison. Con Edison in America is basically like an electricity company. Why they never figured out it was him, I don't know, because he actually sent a whole bunch of letters to the newspaper or laid it with bombs to say Con Edison will pay for their, you know, evil deeds. Had they looked at any kind of employment records, they probably could have figured out that it was him. Anywho, the weird thing about the Mad Bomber is that yes, he was bombing, you know, New York City out of anger because of something that happened to him. But as soon as we entered World War II, he stopped bombing New York City because he said, sorry, my patriotism will not allow me to continue. He did not put out a single bomb during World War II because of his patriotism. Isn't that weird / awesome? So they turned to a Dr. James Brummel, who was a psychiatrist, to look at the crimes and look at the long period of time when he didn't set off bombs and figure out who this might be. And his profile was so incredibly accurate that it is still regaled as this like amazing profile. He predicted that he would be living with an unmarried sister. He predicted that he would be white. He predicted his religion. He was even able to profile the man's general like clothing style, specifically saying that he would be wearing a double-breasted vest and it would be buttoned. And then they went to arrest him. He was wearing a robe. They said, why don't you go get dressed? And he comes out in a double-breasted vest and he is buttoning up as he walks in the door. Everyone was like, are you kidding me? That led to the BAU of today. J. Edgar Hoover created the National Center for Analysis of Violent Crime. 4 units of the NCAVC are 3 different types of BAU. They actually started out being called the BSU, Behavioral Science Unit. It is now called the Behavioral Analysis Unit, but that started in 1974. 3 different units of the BAU. There's just counterterrorism, crimes against adults, crimes against children. The 4th unit is the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, or called VICAP. Sometimes if you're watching Criminal Minds, they refer to a VICAP database of, you know, people who are killed or lots of different unsolved murders, so they can look into that at any point. It wasn't created, you know, immediately. That was something that was developed later on. Initially, they filled it with some hand-picked agents who just kind of had like a natural ability with behavioral analysis. Very soon after they started the unit, they found that they needed some people to specialize in things. Derek Morgan on Criminal Minds has a specialty on fixation and obsessive behaviors. Every once in a while, they call him forward to talk about that. However, I did find out through my research that there's no actual position called a profiler in the FBI that is specifically for movies and TV shows. Which makes me really sad because in college I totally wanted to be a profiler. To find out there's no such position One of the most notable people in the BAU in the early days was John Douglas. He's actually kind of a hero of mine because of how incredibly awesome he was at solving a lot of crimes. And he put a lot of his findings, a lot of the things that he learned into books. His first book called Mindhunter, which is currently being made into a show for HBO. He and several other FBI agents have also helped out on Criminal Minds to make sure that the information is correct and to make sure that they're not giving too much away to inform some serial killers who might be looking for some pointers. Because you want to entertain people, not inform future killers, basically. Just, you know, always a good thing. I have that book and about 2 of his other books, but I couldn't find any of them, so I thought as a substitute I would show you this book that was my textbook in forensic anthropology in college. If you look at that, it's gotten a little bit of wear and tear on it. But yeah, it's called The Forensic Files of Batman. It's Batman right there. This is my textbook in an actual class because my teacher was awesome. If you want to get that for whatever reason, I'll leave a link in the description below. So since the BAU has been created, they've been able to affect a lot of pop culture. For instance, the title character in Psycho, Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs, and the Leatherface guy in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, all based off one guy called Ed Gein, who the BAU caught in the 1950s. And then of course, as the character of Hannibal Lecter, they actually used agents from what was then called the BSU to help them create the character, even though that was actually based on a real guy too. According to the woman who wrote the books, was based on Albert Fish, also known as the Vampire of Brooklyn, who killed and ate kids in the 1920s and 30s. Ugh. There are also episodes of Criminal Minds that are reminiscent of very recent and very real actual crimes. I've seen echoes of Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer. Pig Farm is a whole crazy thing that was actually going on in Canada. If you saw that, that was a season finale of season 5, I want to say. So if you're an avid watcher of Criminal Minds and there's an episode that you have a question about, please remember to put that in the comments below because I will be covering that in the next couple of days. I know this video is up kind of late, but it's not midnight yet here, so I will get it up ASAP so it's not late and I didn't miss a day. I absolutely love you guys. My scoops are beautiful. Please remember to like and favorite, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.